The trap snapped shut with a sound like breaking bones. Through the blizzard, I saw it. White fur matted with blood, amber eyes burning with an intelligence that made my hands shake. This wasn't just a wolf. But I told myself it didn't matter. 500 gold coins would solve all my problems. I was wrong. Chapter 1: The Sale. The journey to the trader's outpost took 3 days through country that grew progressively bleaker. Myers kept to the main roads where he could, the wolf padding behind his horse on a chain just long enough to allow the beast some dignity. Not that it mattered. Those amber eyes never left him, not when they stopped to water the horses, not when Myers made camp at night, not in the gray hours before dawn when he woke to find the creature watching him through the bars of its muzzle. Blood money. That's what the innkeeper had called it, and the words followed Myers like a curse. The crimson arena rose from the wasteland like a scar on the horizon, a crumbling amphitheater that had seen better centuries. The air itself seemed thicker here, heavy with old violence and fresh anticipation. Crowds milled about the entrance, faces flushed with drink and the promise of spectacle. Myers caught snatches of conversation, odds being laid, past champions remembered, new fighters evaluated like livestock. He found the arena master in a stone chamber beneath the seats, a thick-necked man with scarred knuckles and the calculating eyes of someone who'd made a fortune from other people's suffering. The wolf was dragged in behind Myers, and the master's expression shifted from boredom to avarice in an instant. White wolf. Rare. He circled the animal slowly. I can work with this. Death match tonight if you want quick payment. How much? Myers heard himself ask, though part of him already knew he shouldn't. 500 gold. Immediate. It was more than Myers had seen in a year. More than he'd make in 2. The words death match should have meant something, should have stopped him, but his hand was already reaching for the purse the master extended. Done. The wolf's eyes found his then a long, penetrating stare that seemed to strip away every justification Myers had constructed. There was no rage in that gaze, no plea for mercy. Just a terrible, knowing sadness, as if the creature understood exactly what was happening and had already forgiven him for it. Myers looked away first. He walked out of that arena with heavy pockets and a hollow chest, the weight of gold somehow less substantial than the weight of those amber eyes. The crowd's roar followed him into the street, eager and bloodthirsty. Somewhere behind him, they were already preparing the wolf for slaughter. You fool. The voice stopped him. An old woman, hunched and gray, blocked his path. Her eyes were filmy with age, but sharp with knowledge. You've condemned King Aldrich, she said, her voice cracking like old leather. That beast you sold? It was his only chance. The curse, she spat on the ground. The curse needed the white wolf broken, not dead. You've killed your king, boy. And you did it for 500 pieces of gold. She was gone before Myers could respond, disappearing into the crowd like smoke, leaving him standing alone with his blood money burning a hole through his pocket. Chapter 2: The Curse Revealed. Myers found the old woman in a tavern that smelled of stale beer and desperation. She didn't seem surprised when he slammed his hands on her table, gold coins spilling from his trembling fingers. Tell me, he demanded. Tell me everything. She took her time lighting a pipe, her weathered hands steady while it shook. King Aldrich ruled justly for 20 years. Then Mordain came, a sorcerer with honeyed words and dark ambitions. The king trusted him, made him advisor. She exhaled smoke that seemed too thick, too dark. Mordain repaid that trust with betrayal. A curse woven during a royal hunt, witnessed by none. One moment, a king. The next, a beast. How long? For months. For months his loyalists have searched every forest, every mountain, every cursed corner of this kingdom. Her milky eyes fixed on him. And you found him first. Myers felt the blood drain from his face. The death match. 3 days. The old woman's voice was flat, final. 3 days until your king dies for the entertainment of drunken fools. And if Aldrich dies in that form, the curse becomes permanent. Mordain sits on the throne unchallenged forever. The kingdom will drown in his darkness. Myers was already moving, racing back through streets that seemed to mock him with their normalcy. The arena master looked up from his ledgers with the expression of a man who'd heard every plea, every offer, every desperate bargain. I want to buy him back, Myers said, dumping his purse on the desk. All of it. 500 gold. More if you need it. The master didn't even glance at the money. The beast is already promoted. Posters are printed. Bets are placed. Half the province is coming to see the White Wolf's final dance. He leaned back, smiling. You could offer me 5,000 and the answer would be the same. That creature dies in 3 days, and I'll make 10 times what you paid me. Myers was still standing there, staring at the gold he couldn't spend, when rough hands seized him from behind. He was dragged into an alley, slammed against stone hard enough to rattle his teeth. 4 men surrounded him, hard-eyed soldiers in plain clothes, but their bearing gave them away. We know what you did, the largest one said, his voice like grinding stone. We know what you sold. I didn't know. We don't care. A knife appeared, its edge catching the dim light. We've been searching for months. Months. And you stumbled onto our king and sold him like common livestock. The blade pressed against Myers' throat. So here's your choice, merchant. You have 3 days to get King Aldrich out of that arena. 3 days to undo what you've done. The master won't sell. Then don't buy him. The knife pressed deeper, drawing a thin line of blood. Steal him. Trick him. Burn the whole damned arena down if you must. But if our king dies in there, you'll pray for an arena death. We'll kill you slower than any beast and make sure you're conscious for every moment. They released him, letting him collapse into the mud. Fix this, the soldier said, or you'll beg us for mercy we won't give. They vanished into the shadows, leaving Myers alone with 3 days and an impossible task. Chapter 3: Debt and Desperation. The syndicate's collector counted the gold with methodical precision, his thick fingers sorting coins into neat stacks. Myers watched the blood money change hands and felt nothing. The weight that had pressed on his shoulders for months, the debt that had driven him to those mountains, to that cave, to that decision, lifted like morning fog, leaving behind something colder and heavier. We're square, the collector said, sweeping the gold into his bag. Don't borrow again. Myers nodded, but the words seemed to come from very far away. The debt was paid. He was free. Free to do what? Free to live with amber eyes that followed him into sleep, into dreams, into every waking moment. He found himself in a tavern, staring at ale he couldn't taste. How had it come to this? Once, he'd been different. Once, he'd had a merchant's honor, his word as good as contract, his handshake binding. But honor didn't feed you when the crops failed. It didn't keep the syndicate's enforcers from your door when investments went sour. Survival had teeth, and every bite took something away. First his pride, then his principles. Now, apparently, his soul. He could run. Take what was left of the gold, find a ship, disappear into the southern provinces where no one knew his name or his sins. The loyalists would never find him. The wolf would die. King Aldrich would die. Mordain would rule. And Myers would live, because that's what he did. He survived. A child's laughter pulled him from his spiral. A girl, no more than 7, sat at a nearby table with her father. She was drawing on parchment with charcoal, her tongue poking out in concentration. When she finished, she held it up proudly, a crude figure with a crown, surrounded by smaller figures. "The good king," she told her father. "The one who saved us." Myers's blood went cold. "What did you say?" The father looked up, wary. "My daughter's just playing. Drawing old stories." "What stories?" The man hesitated, then seemed to decide Myers was harmless enough. "King Aldrich. 3 years back, bandits raided our village. 20 men, armed and vicious. We had nothing, no soldiers, no defense. Would have been a massacre." He touched his daughter's head gently. "The king was hunting nearby. Heard the screams. Rode in with just his guard captain and 6 men. They were outnumbered, but Aldrich." The man's voice caught. "He fought like he was worth 10 men. Saved everyone." "Papa says the king was brave," the girl added, returning to her drawing. "Papa says he was good." Myers stared at the crude charcoal sketch. A hero. Not just a king, but a man who'd risked everything for people who could give him nothing in return. A man who'd chosen to fight when he could have ridden past. A man who'd saved a child who was now drawing pictures of his memory. And Myers had sold him. Sold him for 500 gold to pay a debt that suddenly seemed laughably small. He hadn't just sold a wolf or even a king. He'd sold hope itself. He'd sold the one man who'd proven that power could mean protection instead of oppression, that a crown could belong to someone worthy of wearing it. The ale turned to ashes in his mouth. He couldn't run. Not from this. Not anymore. Chapter 4: Infiltration. The arena's labor master had the dead eyes of a man who'd seen too much suffering to be moved by it anymore. He barely glanced at Myers before jerking his thumb toward the kennels. 3 copper a day. You feed the beasts, clean the cells, keep them alive until it's time to die. Don't get attached. Don't get bit. Questions? Myers shook his head, pulling his cap lower. The disguise was simple: rough clothes, hunched shoulders, the anonymous look of a man grateful for any work. No one looked twice at the desperate. The first scream came from somewhere below. Human or animal, Myers couldn't tell. He followed the labor master down stone steps slick with things he didn't want to identify, into a warren of cells that stank of blood and fear and waste. Torchlight flickered across iron bars, revealing glimpses of what waited in the darkness. A bear, its back striped with whip marks, paced in circles too small for its frame. A great cat missing an eye lunged at the bars as they passed, desperation making it reckless. In another cell, something that might have once been a wolf lay motionless, its breathing shallow and labored. These weren't fighters. They were broken things, kept alive only long enough to die with spectacle. "They don't eat much before a fight," the labor master said, his tone suggesting this was kindness. Hunger makes them vicious. Makes them put on a good show. Myers nodded, choking back bile, and kept walking. The white wolf was in the deepest cell, farthest from light and air. Someone had beaten him, fresh wounds crossed the old scars, and one leg was held at an odd angle. The chains that bound him were excessive, cruel, one for each leg, one around his neck, all connected to a ring in the center of the cell. The muzzle had been replaced with something heavier, crueler, metal edges cutting into white fur. But the eyes. God, the eyes still burned. Not with rage or madness, but with something worse, a terrible, unbroken awareness. This was no mere beast driven to frenzy. This was a king, conscious and caged, watching his kingdom slip away while his body was prepared for slaughter. Myers waited until his shift supervisor left, until the only sounds were the distant roar of the crowd above and the quiet suffering all around. Then he approached the bars, his hands shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The words felt pathetically inadequate, too small to carry the weight of what he'd done. "I didn't know. I didn't." His voice broke. "I'm going to get you out." The wolf's head tilted, just slightly. Those amber eyes fixed on Myers with an intensity that stripped away every excuse, every rationalization. Recognition flickered there, and perhaps something else. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the possibility of it if Myers earned it. "I'm not here to ease my conscience," Myers said, more to himself than the wolf. He looked at the chains, the locks, the guards that would need to be dealt with. "I'm here to bleed for my sins." The wolf watched him, silent and waiting, as Myers began to plan their escape. Chapter 5. The Plan. Myers spent 2 days memorizing the arena's rhythms like a prayer. Guards changed at dawn and dusk, 6 men rotating through 3 positions. The east gate had a broken hinge that groaned when opened, useful for knowing when someone approached. The kennels were checked twice nightly, but the guards hated going down there, so they rushed, barely glancing into cells. He was sketching the layout on stolen parchment when he overheard the arena master speaking with a cloaked visitor. "Lord Mordain himself will attend?" The master's voice dripped with obsequious pleasure. "We're honored. I assure you, the spectacle will be worthy. Just ensure the beast dies." The visitor's voice was cold, refined. "Publicly. Brutally. I want no room for doubt." Myers's hand froze. Mordain. The sorcerer would be here, watching, ensuring his curse held. Ensuring his stolen throne stayed stolen. That night, Myers ventured deeper into the kennels than he'd dared before. The bear was in a cell that required 3 guards to open, and he understood why the moment he saw it. The creature was massive, easily twice the size of any natural bear, its eyes bleeding red with unnatural rage. Foam flecked its muzzle. Someone had infected it with magic, the kind that turned animals into weapons, killing machines that felt no pain, knew no fear, stopped only with death. This was what they'd set against the king. Over the next day, Myers moved like a ghost. A key lifted from a drunk guard's belt. A short sword stolen from the armory and hidden beneath old straw. He tampered with the gate to the bear's cell, filing through one of the hinges until only a thread of metal held it. During the chaos, it would give way. It had to. He was returning from sabotaging the north exit, a rope tied to the latch, ready to be pulled, when footsteps echoed behind him. "You there? What are you doing in this section?" Myers didn't think. He ran, boots slapping against stone, the guard's shouts alerting others. He ducked through a maintenance passage, squeezed through a gap he'd scouted, emerged in the stables. By the time guards flooded the area, he was mucking out stalls, his face carefully blank. "See anyone run through?" a guard demanded. Myers shook his head, and they moved on, still searching. That night, the old woman found him in an alley behind the arena. She wasn't alone. 4 of the king's loyalists emerged from shadows, grim-faced and ready. "We're here," the largest one said. The soldier who'd threatened him, now his reluctant ally. "When you make your move, we'll hit the main gates. Cause enough chaos for you to get the king out." The old woman pressed a vial into Myers's palm. "The curse can only be broken by willing sacrifice. Blood freely given from one who wronged him." Her eyes bored into his. "Cut deep, boy. Your blood on his fur, your words of release. It's the only way." Myers looked at the vial, empty, waiting to be filled, and then at his palm. He drew his knife and pressed it to his skin, watching blood well up. "Redemption," he whispered, "or death. Either way, he would pay his debt." Chapter 6. The death match begins. The roar of the crowd was a living thing, a tsunami of bloodlust that shook dust from the ancient stones. 3,000 voices screaming as one, demanding violence, demanding death. Myers stood among the arena workers, his stolen keys burning against his ribs, watching as the white wolf was dragged into the pit. They'd removed the muzzle. Small mercy. They wanted the crowd to hear him scream. The wolf stumbled, weak from days of starvation and torture, chains weighing him down like iron guilt. But when he reached the center of the pit, he raised his head. Even broken, even beaten, King Aldrich faced his death with dignity. The arena master raised his hands, and the crowd's thunder became expectant silence. "Citizens of the Crimson Arena, tonight, we present a creature of legend, the White Wolf of the Northern Peaks." He paused for effect. "Against the Crimson Bear, touched by the old magics, undefeated in 17 battles." The gate opposite the wolf groaned open. What emerged was nightmare-made flesh, 12 feet of fur and rage and unnatural hunger, eyes bleeding red, foam and blood mingling at its maw. The bear's roar shook the arena walls. The wolf crouched, chains rattling, preparing for a death he couldn't win. Myers's hand went to his throat, fingers finding the small mirror he'd hidden there. He flashed it once, twice, 3 times the signal. In the stands, chaos erupted. The king's loyalists struck like lightning, a fire in the eastern section, fights breaking out near the exits, screams of panic cutting through the bloodlust. Guards rushed to respond, leaving their posts, and Myers moved. He vaulted the workers' barrier, dropped into the pit 15 feet below, felt something in his ankle give way, but didn't stop. The bear charged the wolf, and Myers threw himself between them, stabbing up with his stolen sword. The blade bit into corrupted flesh, and the bear wheeled, confused by this new prey. Myers scrambled to the wolf, fumbling with the keys, his hands slick with sweat and blood. One lock opened, then another. "You!" The voice cut through chaos like a blade through silk. Myers looked up to see a figure in the master's box, robes billowing despite the still air. Mordain. The sorcerer's face was twisted with rage and recognition. "You dare?" Mordane's hands wove patterns in the air, and darkness bloomed like poison flowers. Shadows poured from the arena's walls, forming a dome that swallowed the sky. The exit sealed with curtains of impenetrable black. Screams of panic from the crowd turned to terror as they realized they were trapped. "None leave," Mordane's voice boomed, amplified by magic. "Not until the wolf dies. The beast, the fool, everyone, sealed until my curse holds." His eyes found Myers in the pit. "You've condemned them all, merchant. 3,000 souls, trapped by your arrogance." The bear roared, the wolf struggled against his remaining chains, and Myers realized with crystal clarity that he'd just turned an execution into a massacre. The final lock clicked open. The chains fell away, and King Aldrich, still trapped in wolf form, rose to face his enemy. Chapter 7: Blood Price. The bear came at them like an avalanche of teeth and corrupted fury. Myers rolled left, his injured ankle screaming protest, while the wolf went right, suddenly fluid now that the chains were gone, moving with a predator's terrible grace. The creature's jaws snapped shut on empty air where Myers had been a heartbeat before. They fought together without words, without planning, Myers drawing the bear's attention with his blade while the wolf struck from behind, tearing at hamstrings and flanks. The sword found purchase between ribs, and Myers twisted, felt the grate of steel on bone. The bear roared and backhanded him across the pit. He hit the wall hard enough to crack stone, or maybe that was his ribs. Above them, Mordane's magic gathered like a storm. "You think removing chains breaks my curse?" The sorcerer's laugh was acid and madness. "Fool! The curse is woven into his very essence." Darkness lashed out not at the wolf, but at Myers. He barely rolled aside as shadow tendrils carved furrows in the arena floor where he'd been. Another strike, another desperate dodge. The bear charged again, and Myers found himself trapped between corrupted beast and corrupted magic. The wolf threw itself at the bear, buying Myers seconds he didn't know how to use. Blood freely given from one who wronged him, the old woman had said. Myers looked at his palm, at the cut he'd made, already scabbing over. Not enough. It had to be willing. It had to be sacrifice. Mordane's hands wove another spell, this one darker, more certain. A spear of pure shadow, aimed not at Myers, but at the wolf's heart. A killing blow, final and absolute. Myers didn't think. Thinking would have stopped him, would have let survival win again. He threw himself into the spell's path, arms spread wide, his body a shield between the sorcerer's hate and the king he'd wronged. The shadow spear punched through his chest like a fist of ice. Pain. God, the pain, not hot but cold, so cold it burned, spreading from his heart outward like frozen fire. He fell, crumpling onto the white wolf, his blood spilling hot and red onto white fur. "I'm sorry," he gasped. The words came easier now, with death making them true. "I'm sorry. I'm light." Not the soft glow of candles or even the brightness of day, but light like the birth of stars, white and pure and absolute. It exploded from where Myers's blood touched fur, expanding outward in a wave that made Mordane's darkness shatter like rotten ice. The bear stumbled back, blinded. The crowd fell silent, stunned. Myers felt the wolf changing beneath him, no, not changing, returning. Bones shifting, lengthening. Fur receding. The amber eyes remained, But the face they inhabited became human, became a man, became a king. King Aldrich rose, tall and powerful, naked and bearing every scar the wolf had carried. His voice, unused for months, cracked when he spoke. "The debt is paid." Myers smiled, blood on his lips, and let the darkness take him. He'd bought redemption with the only coin that mattered. Chapter 8. The King Returns. Aldrich stood on legs that remembered being human, but had forgotten the exact mechanics of it. He swayed, caught himself, and looked down at Myers bleeding out at his feet. Then up at Mordain, who stared from his box with an expression caught between fury and disbelief. "Impossible," the sorcerer breathed. "The curse is broken." Aldrich's voice gained strength with each word. "By the sacrifice of a man who wronged me and paid the price willingly." He reached down, pulling Myers to his feet despite the merchant's protests. "And now, traitor, you face a king." Myers could barely stand, the shadow spear's wound draining him by the heartbeat, but Aldrich's arm around his shoulders kept him upright. Together, they faced the sorcerer. Mordain's hands wove darkness, and lightning born of corruption lashed down. Aldrich pushed Myers aside and raised his own hands, the magic that had been locked away with his human form surging back. Royal magic, ancient and pure, met the sorcerer's attack with a crack like breaking worlds. Above, the Loyalists had reached the magical seal. Their own mage, the old woman, her frailty falling away to reveal barely contained power, struck at the dome with crystalline force. Cracks spiderwebbed across the shadow barrier. "You stole my throne," Aldrich said, and each word carried the weight of months trapped, beaten, chained. "You cursed me, hunted me, would have had me die in filth for entertainment." He advanced, naked and terrible, every inch a king despite having nothing. "But worst of all, you made good people suffer for your ambition." The bear, confused by the transformation, charged Mordain instead. The sorcerer incinerated it with a gesture, but the distraction cost him. Aldrich's magic found purchase, wrapping around Mordain like chains of light, dragging him from his box down into the pit. They fought like gods and demons, magic tearing the air itself. The crowd scattered in panic as the seal shattered, but Myers couldn't move, could only watch as his king, and he was Myers's king now, bought with blood, battled for his kingdom. Mordain gathered everything he had left, all his corrupted power, into one final strike. A lance of pure annihilation, aimed at Aldrich's heart. Myers saw it coming. Saw the king's guard drop for just a moment. Saw the spell that would end everything. He moved without thinking. Had he ever done anything else when it mattered? Throwing himself between king and death for the second time. The spell took him full in the chest, and this time there was no transformation to save him, no magical reversal. Just tearing, burning, ending. He hit the ground and didn't get up. Aldrich's roar shook the arena. His magic exploded outward in a wave of pure fury, and Mordain's screams cut short as royal justice, too long delayed, found its mark. Then the king was kneeling in the blood-soaked sand, cradling Myers with surprising gentleness. "Stay," Aldrich commanded, but even kings can't command death. Myers managed to smile. "Paid my debt. You paid it twice over." The king's voice broke. "You're forgiven, Myers. Do you hear me? You're forgiven." "Good," Myers whispered. "That's good." The amber eyes were the last thing he saw, no longer a wolf's, but a king's, and full of something that might have been friendship, given time they'd never have. Myers died with a clear conscience, and that was enough. Chapter 9. The Price of Redemption. Myers woke to golden light and the absence of pain, which told him immediately that something was wrong. The dying weren't supposed to wake. He tried to sit up and found Aldrich's hand on his shoulder, pressing him back down. "My magic saved you," the king said quietly, "though you did your damnedest to make it difficult." The kingdom celebrated for 7 days. Streets flooded with people weeping and singing, grateful their true king had returned. Myers watched from a guarded room, recovering, waiting for the inevitable. It came on the 8th day. The throne room was packed with nobles, soldiers, and citizens, all come to see justice for the man who'd sold their king. Myers stood in chains, not because he'd tried to flee, but because it seemed appropriate. He'd done the crime. He'd faced the punishment. Aldrich looked every inch a king now, crowned and robed, the scars from his ordeal hidden beneath royal finery. But the amber eyes were the same. "Myers sold me into death," Aldrich pronounced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "For this crime, the old laws demand execution." The crowd murmured approval. Myers closed his eyes. "However," the king continued, "he also saved me. Twice. At the cost of everything, including his own life, which I then saved." Aldrich leaned forward. "Exile. You leave my kingdom and never return. You earned your life back, Myers. Go live it somewhere else." Myers nodded, throat too tight for words, and was escorted out. The year that followed was different. Myers traveled to the borderlands where desperation made men cruel and beasts paid the price. He found creatures in traps, cages, bound for arenas or collections or worse. He freed them. Never asked for coin, never sought reward. Some he could save. Some he could only give mercy to. Each one was a small payment against an infinite debt. The letter found him in a mountain village, sealed with the royal crest. Inside, 2 words, "Come home." The throne room was quieter this time. Just Aldrich, Myers, and a small white bundle that squirmed in the king's arms. "You've been busy," Aldrich said, not unkindly. "Reports of a man freeing trapped beasts, asking nothing in return. They think you're mad. Maybe I am. Or maybe you've found your purpose." Aldrich extended the pardon, official, sealed, unquestionable. "I'm creating a new position. Royal Beast Warden. Someone to ensure that what happened to me never happens to any creature in my kingdom again." He met Myers's eyes. "The job is yours if you want it." Myers took the document with shaking hands. "Why?" "Because protecting the innocent shouldn't be exile, Myers. It should be honored." Aldrich smiled and held out the white bundle. "Besides, this one needs someone who understands what it's like to be lost and found." The wolf pup looked up at Myers with amber eyes too knowing for something so small. "Protect the innocent," Aldrich said. "That's your penance. That's your purpose. That's how you continue to earn what you paid for in blood." Myers cradled the pup, feeling the warm weight of new responsibility, new hope. Years later, when people asked how he became Beast Warden, he'd smile and say, "I sold a king for gold and bought back my soul with blood. Some prices are worth paying." And the white wolf at his side would meet his eyes with understanding that transcended species, transcended words, a reminder that redemption, once earned, must be lived every single day.